Alright, so today is the 25th of July, 2017. This is actually a personal private consultation. The SID client has made it clear or opted to that I may have potentially permission if I would like to use some of this content for some sort of public example in the future, because apparently she's got balls of steel and has no shame. But anyway, so this client in particular, my friend Luna, she is currently feeling the sting of the lingering residual effects of Pluto having a hard aspect to Venus that also happened last year as well. And just for her partner, I'm not including him in the reading because A, I don't have his information, B, I don't have distinctive permission to use information even if she obtained it, and C, he's not paying for reading and I'm not getting into that. But just from what I gather, what I know about him briefly, because I'm an acquaintance of his, he's 29 years old, going through his Saturn return clearly, as I am as well, has generational influences with Uranus and Sagittarius, as well as Saturn and Sagittarius, and he is a Sagittarius sun, that's as far as I know, and he has an Aries Mars. So the one thing that I know for a fact that I can point out here at the moment, at least that might be coming from him being potentially the source of the quote-unquote, I guess, discontent or issues that are now manifesting in Luna's behavior, would be he's a lot of fire, and he would naturally be more masculine than feminine, aka not very supportive, emotionally nurturing, and empathic. That's just presumption, and I can't say that that's exactly correct, but with at least that much in fire, I know for sure, it would make sense that he likely is not very in tune with his emotions. That happens when you have masculine air fire strong in a chart. So the only issue, and the reason I bring that up, is Luna in particular is has excessive water and earth in her chart. So I've said this before in mumbling in random videos about Venus and need versus want kind of thing, in the Anima Animus, I think, ramble I made, that the complementary elements are earth and water, and the complementary elements with the other ones are air and fire. And usually when you mix fire and water signs together, it's usually unstable, doesn't usually have I don't want to say chance, but it has a tendency to not be a long committed kind of partnership, and it's usually very dramatic, combative, unstable. And one thing in particular I'm well aware of with Sagittarius as well, that they have commitment issues. And another thing I've noted as well is people with significant Sagittarius influence that have been going through a Saturn return, because they have Saturn in Sagittarius, it just kind of perpetuates the whole inability to commit, or having fear of commitment, or questioning one's committed relationships that were already in the works or committed before the Saturn return began, and or close around the proximity of when it happened. So that would have been in September 2015. So Sagittariuses are usually fickle, hard to pin down and get them to commit as it is. And then having a Sagittarius going through their Saturn return with Saturn also in Sagittarius, it would be a no-brainer that there's going to either at least be an on and off again kind of scenario happening with the or incidents, and or I would just honestly recommend, I mean, I was even guilty of this, just literally take a self-vacation and break away and go be you. Figure out your problems, especially if you have Saturn in Sagittarius. Figure out your problems, because you have a lot of, obviously, throughout your life, you've either over-exaggerated your potential, and now you're coming to reality with the fact that, yeah, you're not as fucking hot as you probably have been, kind of mentally beefing yourself up to be, and or you have some significant squares, which would likely, obviously, either be in Virgo or Pisces, and just those two signs in particular are very hypercritical. Either they think they're not good enough, aka Pisces, or they feel guilty because they're not doing enough for others, or with Virgo, they just feel like they're not actually achieving enough and applying themselves enough, and that they're not practical or useful. So if you have squares to anything in Sagittarius, you have one of the two problems. So for sure, I know for a fact from personal experience, as well as just those two being the two possible scenarios, that he either has some sort of insecurity with being adequate to himself, and or he's facing the reality that he's actually not as hot shit as he probably thinks he is. Which, with a lot of significant Sagittarius, it's probably that one. But anyway, I'm going to try to not necessarily pick on him, per se, because I'm actually being kind of biased right now, because he's being a typical Sagittarius and being a little childish right now, and I definitely feel like I'm justified in calling him out, because I'm well aware and I have my childish moments. Usually I like to at least forewarn people, because I'm a little bit more self-aware, obviously. And I also did the same bullshit he's doing right now last summer, because I'm an overachiever and I jumped the gun a little bit, or I just... The Neptune on the 10th house transit just totally made me lose an entire sense of time, and I was a year ahead. Could totally be legit. I woke up and I don't even know what day it is sometimes. Anyway, so with Luna in particular, she's got overwhelming water, and she's also a Cancer. So Cancer's one of my presumptions or beefs with why I never before Matt dated Cancers, and or why Cancers usually ran away from me if they actually, for whatever reason, I don't know, they were masochist, or they just wanted to be tortured, so they went after the most scariest looking girl ever that usually probably physically did push them off. I remember a couple Cancer guys in high school. I'm like, what is your problem? Do you have a death wish? Yeah. But anyway, so they need a lot of emotional coddling and support. Even Boo here has a moon in Cancer, and he has a Venus in Cancer. So he, regardless if when I acknowledge it or not, and even still naturally throughout our dynamic, there's going to be some times that, regardless if I am aware of it or not at the time, that I'm going to neglect his over-needy emotional coddliness that he needs.
I do what I can to curb it.
Yeah. It's just something I cannot avoid, and he cannot avoid. He is a lot of water, and I'm a lot of air and fire, and I'm psychopathic clinically. So there's only so much I can do. So the same kind of dynamic is going on with these two. She needs a lot of nurturing. She's also a Plutonian, and from what she told me about her mother's also a Plutonian as well. And Plutonian mothers, unfortunately, unless they actually happen to have children that don't have a lot of feminine signs or water elements, usually do grow up and are indirectly, without any kind of intention or awareness of it, afflicted or traumatized or neglected, and manifest some sort of emotional or mental issues, disorders, or conditions throughout their adult life, just because the Plutonian is naturally reclusive and doesn't actually develop emotional bonds with people. And that's actually because it's the vicious cycle of abuse. So if her mother is a Plutonian, that means that her mother, directly or indirectly by the parents or something with her upbringing, was basically exposed to an abusive situation or was neglected herself. So that's why even in child psychology development and with abuse patterns and stuff, that it's hard to break the cycle with abusive influences, and then the kid that was then exposed to the abuse grows up and then typically tends to become either vicariously relive the abuse by being drawn to people who are abusive, and or they become abusers themselves. So unfortunately, it's just the cards that have been dealt. So the only issue that is with that is that we look at her chart now. So she's got Eris in Aries on the first house. I mentioned that in my Cancer video as well, that she that makes her an anarchist or a rebel, or somebody that's just gonna be like, fuck you, I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want to do.
Just a baffled dictator.
Yeah, and it just, when you look at all, she's got the moon, Mercury, and the Sun, and Ceres, and Jupiter, and where is Pallas at? At least Pallas is in water, and she's got her Saturn in water. So she's going to be very emotional, volatile, all over the place. Cancers usually, just like the moon changes every 2 days in signs, they can be totally in Wonderland one day and then a whole fucking meltdown, and they throw the baby with the bathwater out the next day, and it's just because they broke a nail or some shit, and it's just
hopefully not literally.
Well, sometimes literally, especially with news reports going on lately. Anyway, so here's the problem. She's an Aries rising, obviously with the Eris right there. And she naturally reflects her mother's lack of opening up and being emotionally available, because you basically grow up and become your parents because you're emulating their example by what you subconsciously absorbed between your infancy to age 7, which I've talked about that yet again when we're talking about the astropsychological development with Saturn. So she has Saturn in Pisces retrograde in the 12th house. So something to do with the secrets that are of known to her have something to do with her parents or her actual upbringing, and they're either psychological states. So that just kind of coincides with what I'm saying. So Pisces is associated with one of the mental houses, lords, and it has to do with instability and also a complete lack of self-awareness, and usually they have no sense of identity or anything, awareness of any kind, nothing. They're halfway to Saturn and beyond, and they're not even in reality. So it would be something to do with her mother might actually have some sort of mental cognitive issue or disorder. But yeah, so it's the mental instability of some sort of parent or authority figure that is unknown to her. And since Saturn's actually in the quadrant on my dial here of the moon, that actually is directly tied to the mother. So it's something to do with her mother actually hiding something from her that made her unable to give the nurturing kind of empathetic environment that she desperately needed, being a Cancer sun. So I'm not even going to try to integrate Vulcan conjunct her sun in the 4th house, since she's a Cancer. 4th house is the house that's ruled by Cancer. So, but I will at least highlight that she has the sun opposition with Uranus in the 10th house, and also that's in a stellium with the Earth sign as well as Neptune. So, and I don't even know how she gets through life. She has throughout her entire life Neptune on the 10th house. So I keep bitching about how that's like totally messing up my mojo, and she's got to deal with that lifelong. But at least that means that she develops some sort of tolerance or something. But she has actually a T-square to the Sun and Juno and Uranus. So there's a couple things that play into this. When we look at this from her sun sign perspective, we then go to look at the moon. Where's the moon at? The moon is in the 7th house of relationships, and it's in Scorpio. So Scorpio is, quote unquote, not only a feminine sign, so it's associated with negativity, but it's plutonic, abusive, and or wasn't properly nurtured, that sort of thing. So with it being conjunct with Jupiter, yeah, so something about how she either has some sort of toxic sort of like emotional foundation, and then we would look to the ruler of that sign for the moon, which is Scorpio, so that would obviously be Pluto. Pluto being in our 8th house, the 8th house is the reciprocating house of the 2nd house of relationships, so developing bonds with people or actually understanding how to express intimacy on a platonic and an intimate level with, well, not intimate obviously until you're adult, but a platonic level with your parents. So because her mother, for whatever reason, failed to do so, that's actually why she's emotionally volatile and or emotionally toxic. And Moon in Scorpio can actually manifest into destructive tendencies or behavior if they're definitely feeling justified, or if the toxic environment is continually being perpetuated into their daily life. So she has the moon, the moon in opposition with Black Moon Lilith. So she's completely unaware that, again, it all stems from the 12th house associations. She's completely unaware that although her mother tried and did her best, that she actually fully neglected her emotional development, and that she doesn't even realize that her depression and any of her emotional volatility stems directly from the lack of a good example of healthy emotional bonding. And as long as she's unaware of that, and she's also unaware of Lilith in the 1st house, which is her shadow projection, where she, naturally having so many feminine planets, she doesn't vent or express things or kind of, vocalize her concerns, especially having a water Mercury, Cancer Mercury, that her holding it in, as anybody should know, if you at least know a Libra person or whatever, somebody with significant Libra in them, or perhaps one of the water signs significantly, they have a tendency every once in a while to have a huge freaking psychotic, like, blow up episode. You know what that's from? That's from all of the intensity and all the malefic issues that they are trying to suppress within. So that's the whole point of why you're supposed to rectify the excessive water so you can outlet something. Or even people who are like just straight up water and that's all they got. A lot of them tend to be artistic and outlet some of their disdain or discontent or depression or troubles through artistic pursuits. So when she fails to address her emotional instability, because she doesn't actually even know where the origin of it comes from to understand it and kind of cope with it and do some sort of talk therapy with it, it will immediately deflect to her shadow projection with the moon. The fact that symbolically Black Moon Lilith is supposed to be the dark side of the moon, and in fact it's opposition with her moon, and her moon's actually in the dark, quote-unquote, dark archetype of Scorpio, is just even more, I don't think I could have even more perfect literal example for the dark side of somebody's emotions that they're completely unaware of. And supposedly her, estranged boyfriend or whatever has accused her of being really dark, and that she gets into habits or tangents where she just feels like she's actually a magnet or encouraging some sort of dark energy or feelings to actually gravitate towards her. And that would be that. So if she's feeling toxic within, and she's just, being kind of sacrificial more or less, Saturn and Pisces as well, and just her wanting to hold it in because she doesn't want to trouble anybody with her issues, and or she's just very insecure and uncomfortable with expressing her feelings because of the lack of a good example of how to do so in a healthy manner from her mother, she's just going to hold it in, and eventually it's going to start spewing out in any way it possibly can.
Repression has explosive results.
Yeah, that, and also her having Eris as well as Pallas in the first house of self. And Pallas is in the quadrant of Venus, which has to do with relationships. So actually it would be Pallas directly, and it is conjunct with Lilith as well. So Pallas is associated, let me read off my little cue card here. Daddy issues, conflict, legal battles, injustice, illness caused by a weakened immune system, incorporated with the sign of Libra, father-daughter dynamic, father issues, intelligence, strategic, cerebral, ideas, justice, creativity, artistic, independent, intuition, wisdom, and defense. So she's the daughter of Zeus, and she's got Zeus's attitude because of the whole, influence with that. And she goes off, I have a Pallas Grand Trine with Lilith, and basically when I sit there and go, I'm going to go fucking throw somebody on the bus 3 or 4 times because I can justify it by this. Technically, especially if you're looking at it from an objective kind of law regulations or, like a court sort of thing, I wouldn't be justified in throwing them under the bus 3 extra times. But Pallas will justify it however she wants. Because she's daddy's girl, she's Zeus's daughter, and she can do whatever the hell she wants. And Zeus over-exaggerates and overkills everything. Hello, Sagittarius archetype. So she's going to go ahead and do that too. So as a matter of fact, I think it's actually kind of funny and probably really karmatic, like a karmatic kind of example in motion, that her on and off again boyfriend is accusing her of being too intense, too negative, or too overkill with stuff. Because also because she does have a lot of feminine planets, a lot of this is going to be reactionary. So she's actually been inquiring about what is wrong with her so she can resolve her issues and be a better partner for him. She has Moon in the 7th house, meaning that her relationships take precedence. Priority is the number one thing in her entire life. I know what that's like. I'm a Libra, as well as having Moon in the 7th house. Before, I actually felt like I had something I was contributing that was worth anything, and I, basically worked on myself and felt proud within myself, I looked to cling to a partner of some kind, or a boyfriend, or whoever, to basically tell me that I'm awesome and amazing, because I didn't actually think of that myself. So I actually needed somebody else to be the voice inside for self-love, and that shit does not work. That actually just makes you like a Stockholm Syndrome kind of scenario, like a willing Stockholm Syndrome on your end, with whatever partners you're with. So her approaching me this way and saying, I want to actually, while she's kind of, financial restraints, I mean, a lot of people are right now, Pluto and Capricorn, hello, she's willing to then fork out some of her own hard-earned money so she can find out what is wrong with her to make Stefan happy. That, I totally know exactly what kind of mentality she has, and a part of me just wants to shake her and go, girl, fucking snap out of it. But then the other part of me knows that, girl, you're not going to snap out of that shit till you're 30. So there's nothing I can do, no matter how much I shake you, it's not going to help. So, but that's the first and foremost thing. We're not approaching this chart or this reading in the context of which she asked to find out what's wrong with her to appease her boyfriend, because that's the stupidest thing to do. And I'm sure her Palace and Eris in her first house are just, when she hears this, are going to, give her some sort of endorphin release in her head and go, yes, see, that's what we're trying to tell you, and it's manifesting through basically the pot on the stove that's boiling over, and it's starting to steam, and there's fucking hot mess everywhere. The hot mess is Palace and Lilith and Eris trying to get her to wake up and realize what's going on.
Almost sounds like a form of gaslighting, if I don't think about it.
Well, right. She also does have Chiron conjunct with Venus. And, yeah.
Awesome.
In the 6th house. So that would mean that she has some sort of, either she has an inability to have healthy relationships, which again, that stems again from her mother's example. And I hate to beat up her mother or whatever, but I'm sure if her mother's a Libra and she's a Plutonian Libra, she's got to know at least a little bit about herself, and or if she even heard this vicariously somehow, some way at one point or another, she would then be able to acknowledge that in her own head and go, yeah, that totally makes sense, and I'm not attacking her, and I would assume, just being a Libra Plutonian myself, that she could take this with a grain of salt and understand that yes, I take accountability for my part in this, but it was unintentional. So that's the first thing that she needs to understand, where the problem stemmed from. Secondly, she needs to understand that with Ceres, specifically in Cancer as well, that's the way that you heal yourself. It's in conjunct with her Mercury. So Ceres just being in a water sign, and especially Cancer, she needs to be, she needs the, like the reassurance and feeling secure, and feeling emotionally supported, and somebody who is attentive, and at least acknowledges her feelings and asks her if she's okay, and it gives her some sort of possible, window or dialogue, or even, because she's got Virgo with her Venus as well, and she does have quite a bit of a either orderliness about her per se, because she does have a stellium with Capricorn, where her and whoever she's dating could possibly say, at least once a month, like every maybe Thursday afternoon or something like that, when we're sitting down eating dinner, can we just, put a stopwatch on like our phone or whatever, and just have like let's talk about anything that's building up and upsetting me, or things that I just feel like I need reassurance with. That does take a lot of balls and guts to just admit shit like that, because you're opening up for vulnerability. Plutonians hate to do that kind of shit. Definitely, she said she was ordering the Healing Pluto Problems book. That book will definitely put her in the right direction to start resolving some of these issues, but it will take time. So, by my guess, with her having a water series and having a significant other that is substantial fire, and clearly going through some potentially delusions himself, which is, not his fault, it's just transits, and that's shit happens. The whole taking accountability and being aware of him potentially neglecting her needs, and also her acknowledging too that she needs to also vocalize her needs. I understand that that's usually some sort of struggle or problem for most people. I'm just really awkward and weird, and I learned a long time ago that it actually causes way more damage. In fact, even to the point of potentially sabotaging my freedom if I don't just flat out say what my needs are from the get-go. And just instantly when it starts to build up, or I start to think about it, that I have a problem. I've learned that the conflict that arises in the process of just making sure that my needs are known and that I have problems is the better option and safer for everybody involved. And luckily for her, again, she has a lot of water, so she's more reactive and receptive. So she won't lash out as quickly or as overkill as I would, unless she's thoroughly provoked. So one thing that I find fascinating as well, and this is me going kind of biased and being a fucking plutonian asshole right now, because her significant other says that I'm full of shit and that she should stop talking to me because he's overheard some of the videos that I've, made just specifically about her. It's not even about him. It's about her, or it's about me, and I have a lot of similar planets to him, just generation wise, and because he's emulating a really fucking intense. I think it's one of the most challenging, like, self-imposed bullshit that I've dealt with thus far in my life. Unless later the whole poltergeist thing turns out to be because I was a psychotic asshole when I was a kid, then that'll take number one. As of right now, last year's Saturn square Neptune bullshit during my Saturn return has been fucking nuts. And yeah, so he's going through that right now. So if he continues, which she's empathic, obviously, and because she's been talking to me as well, if she's well aware that he's having some sort of emotional disturbances, and she clearly is aware that she has some sort of emotional problems as well, and she just continues to hold it in and doesn't even get any kind of support or empathetic kind of reassurance from him from the get-go with their relationship, and then he has the audacity to start pointing at all of her quote-unquote mental instability or emotional instability when he's in the middle of fucking meltdown mode. And actually, when somebody with a significant Sagittarius influence is in meltdown mode, they turn into Ted Bundy. When a Scorpio or Plutonic archetype goes into meltdown mode, they throw themselves in an oven like Sylvia Plath. A little bit different. Yes, there's deaths both involved, but at least you're actually not physically harming somebody else. I'm not encouraging suicide, but you know what I mean. So he has no place to actually be trying to sit there and lecture her about her emotional instability and her issues, especially since if he's that aware of them and or if he's been with her for a significant amount of time, and I'm guessing with all the fixed associations she has, because she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. She's got 7 fixed planets, and 3 of them are in her 7th house of relationships, and the other 3 are in her 1st house. So it's pretty evident that she's at least consistent. So if she's volatile or she's like emotionally kind of toxic, she's consistent with that, which obviously is kind of what's leading to what's going on right now. So at some point or another, unless he's totally oblivious to things, and noting that he has some sort of common interest with Stacy, and although Stacy can be kind of oblivious to reality sometimes, he's not stupid. So I have to give this person credit, at least to some extent, that he has some form of intelligence or observations at least, or at least comprehension of some complex things. So there has to have been some point or another throughout their relationship that he was aware that she has some sort of emotional instability or emotional disorders or issues. She has admitted that she has like manic depression or whatever. And she's even recently been feeling suicidal before the huge conflict between her and her significant other came to be. And the fact that she felt kind of apprehensive to vocalize that to me, and also because she's not comfortable sharing her feelings or whatever, it's just because I'm so raw and authentic that she feels like she can actually just open up to me because I've already been vulnerable and I opened up the door initially. So while she's been sitting here trying to do her best to put on a good front and feeling potentially suicidal inside, and she says that this has been actually a reoccurring issue throughout her life, that she's gone through phases where she really, really was thinking about it and actually premeditating it. He's never actually been there for her to support this whatsoever. So as she's actually still trying to be the bigger person, and she's even younger than him, and try to support him in any way, even to the point of paying for a reading to find out what's wrong with her to help him, speaks volumes. So that's another thing too. And I almost keep talking like I'm hoping that he watches this too. And I know that even if I say this and she's already thinking that I was going to say this anyway, that she should just play this on loud volume somewhere within the dwelling that they both live in, because that's apparently how they got in a fight yesterday about the cancer video. And me specifically mentioned the whole Eris thing on her ascendant.
That's unfortunate, but these are the kind of discussions that need to be had, however painful.
Right. So
honestly, it sounds more and more like this guy is not dealing with this shit. It's making him toxic, and he's externalizing it.
right, he's just projecting like volatilely. And what I find fascinating is that the Eris thing is pretty much all I really, highlighted with her. And I said, so she can be a rebellious kind of anarchist catalyst and a rebel and rebel against, a narrative or whatever, or, just be in general, just a confrontational thing. And he has been dealing with, because he's been like that. It was like when I was kind of like that last year. I mean, you weren't necessarily being like, oh, like it was like when I started to get really defensive and intense, you would get like that back at me because that's a natural defensive response. So if she's already got an Aries ascendant and then she's got Eris and Lilith and Pallas right there, and he's coming at her like, I don't want to be fucking near you, I don't want to deal with your shit, I've got problems going on, and he's like, stop talking on the fucking ghost app and shit like that, she's going to be reactive, just like I said in the reading. So the fact that it's actually his behavior that he's not acknowledging that has probably made her reactive, because naturally by the dynamic she's reactive, that he's not taking responsibility or accountability for his behavior, or he's completely unaware of it, which is totally plausible. And then he heard me say that she could potentially be provoked and become rebellious. What? Yeah. And become rebellious. Then he's probably sitting there thinking, she's a bad influence on you, she's encouraging you to rebel. No. That's not how it is. So she's not going to rebel unless you give her some sort of fucking reason to. So if you come at her defensively, or treat her with disrespect, or come at her in an aggressive way, or do something that would be quote-unquote, in Pallas's perspective, unjustified as her partner in general, which would be neglecting her emotional needs, and basically not being a compassionate kind of person and trying to at least exercise whatever healthy intimacy to the level extent that he can, which he wouldn't be going through a Saturn return right now, and then being a Sagittarius that's usually hard to commit anyway. The second that he starts to come at her in a more aggressive way, like for example any of the dialogue that they may have on a Mars day or something, for instance, she's going to be volatile and react back. And probably because I was exactly on point in that part of the video, that he automatically is now making these accusations that I'm the one feeding this kind of behavior into her, and I'm the weird people on the internet that she talks to that she should stop talking to. Although I'm actually on his friends list, and he also is apparently chatting with my boyfriend.
We chatted briefly.
But you're a weird person on the internet that he doesn't know. So that's what I'm getting at. I'm not getting at the context of what you guys are talking about, but we're weird people on the internet that also are in contact with him. And it was directly my video that he was flipping out about. So it's not the weird people on the internet that actually bothered him. It's something that I said. Which is probably because I'm right and people get pissed at me all the time for being right, and the truth hurts, and get over it. Or, at least say, I'm not going to get over it, I'm going to be a childish Sagittarius about it, and fuck you, and I can at least respect that, and I say, go on, go be childish. He's like, I can at least respect that.
It still sounds to me like things are being addressed that need to be addressed for a while, so...
Right.
Unfortunate as this is, it sounds like this was inevitable.
It is, because, again, it's like Jordan and Birdie. Water and fire. Look how that shit happened. They're on and off again. The fact that they probably even, stretched it out as far as it is because there's kids involved. In fact, that's the one thing that Luna is, kind of like, I'm only 23, I don't have the financial stability, and that's again with Vesta and, Black Moon, Lilith, and Taurus. She's going to re-emphasize on how she's not physically and financially, or just on a material level available and ready to have a child. Right. And then she at least knows that she's not emotionally right. So she said, I'm not emotionally healthy enough to have a child right now. In fact, another thing, interestingly enough, if she doesn't know this, or Stefan doesn't know this, if a woman actually conceives or becomes pregnant while she's dealing with manic depression, and or she has some sort of depressive issues, the psychic stain of that emotional volatility, or basically toxicity, actually does impose itself on the fetus itself.
Even on an epigenetic level, this activates certain things in the fetus which will be detrimental in the long run.
Right. So not only is it going to come into the world and she would probably develop postpartum depression, besides the fact that she already has depression apparently, but that whatever the depression, quote unquote, would actually be manifested in the child's Neptune, specifically, because that's the planet that's associated with before the ascendant life, the 12th house. And so that would actually correlate with this, Neptune and Pisces, especially if it has any kind of trines to anything in Scorpio, which naturally, with her having so many Scorpio planets, and also Stefan being the same age as me, meaning he has Pluto and Scorpio, that child is going to absolutely, without a doubt, some place in the chart, have some sort of Scorpio personal planet, and or some sort of hard aspect with Pluto, in particular, in their chart with Neptune. Which, that, if you look in some of my transit history, is one of my transit warnings for massive amounts of suicide and impulsive, destructive, nihilistic, life-threatening kind of behavior and actions. And I even had validation from plenty of people that were like, I just feel so depressed and I need to go be put on depressants, or maybe I should go, commit myself for a 72-hour suicidal watch and stuff like that, or I just feel like dying and blah, 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 blah. And then some people actually just fucking died. And then a couple of my friends that I knew of, or acquaintances at least, fucking died of overdoses during that transit. So, again, with her at least acknowledging that she's not emotionally ready to have children, she's not only saving herself the grief and guilt of potentially watching a child being raised and having some sort of signature that naturally would make them emotionally toxic, and naturally so with the two parents involved, somebody who doesn't actually express healthy, consistent empathy, the potential father in this case, and then somebody who has toxic kind of emotional foundations because, again, she was neglected emotionally as a child. That child is inevitably, between these two, going to have some emotional issues unless she resolves her issues herself. The only thing that I could honestly say is, as the Uranus-Pluto square transit kind of delayed influences continues to unfold throughout the next 5 years or so, which will be right around when she has her Saturn return, that's when she will actually resolve her emotional issues. She has a lot of water, so she has a possibility of being potentially psychic or clairvoyant. This potential moment right here of her trying to basically spare someone else, which would be her direct child, and her having compassion and wanting to actually have a marriage and a partner and children at some point or another. She wants to do everything right, and she wants to actually rectify, regardless if she's aware of the neglect that her mother gave her or not. Make sure that she doesn't create the same kind of environment and bring another life into the world that will then feel emotionally alone, isolated, and completely hopeless on having any kind of fulfillment emotionally throughout her life, as she does. So, if anything, if Stefan or her boyfriend or whatever actually wants to have children and cares about the actual sake and quality of their upbringing, he should actually be thanking her for insisting that they should wait. But Sagittarius are impatient and childish, and they want what they want when they want it now. And I'm notorious for that. I know that very well. I'm a Sagittarius moon in a stellium with Saturn and Uranus, and it's trying to Jupiter in Aries in my 12th house.
It's not just the issue on the home level either, but then unhealthy, raising an unhealthy child. This has an impact on the societal level as well. In fact, I would argue that raising many of these types of children has led to many of our current problems with.
Well, yeah, of course it has. Of course it has, but if he can't even acknowledge her issues,
yeah,
and that's supposed to be something that he's emotionally invested in, I think that his the kind of thought process or understanding the potential long-term repercussions of them bringing a defective child into the world and contributing to problems is not necessarily going to be the first thing on his forefront of his mind.
Which is weird, because this is one of our main focuses in our war against modernity.
Right. Well, partially his Uranus being in Sagittarius is the revolutionary kind of signature that he has.
Yeah.
But that's it. So it's almost like he's more revolutionary to the point of because he just wants to stick it to the man, as opposed to it being for some sort of greater good or thing. So you having so much Cancer and water influence, you're like, I feel, my heart bleeds and I feel compassion for the world, and I want to basically put assholes in their place so that I can help make sure that everybody else doesn't, basically get thrown out with the bathwater.
People on this frequency, this is the concept of weird we put down, and the sociological and religious dedication to it is the
right. Well,
concept of action and reaction. We have a religious dedication.
We could speculate he has a Sagittarius Mercury though too, and that means that he gets maybe like 1 word out of 10 words you say.
Actually, I can pull that up now.
Yeah. I haven't actually looked at his chart, so I don't know. But and again, I'm not going there because first off, the shit isn't free. I'm not stingy about the money, but he also said that I'm full of shit too. And while vicariously actually liking one of my astrology pages within days of him saying that. So granted, he probably could have said that I'm full of shit just because he's getting defensive and he's upset that I actually said something that struck a nerve.
No, you just struck a nerve. I know that.
I know I actually struck a nerve. I know this already because I, again, dealt with this last year. And I know plenty of Sagittariuses, and I actually specifically have a long childhood best friend that's a Sagittarius. And yeah, I don't actually get along with most Sagittarius men, in fact.
Where'd you say his Mercury was?
Sagittarius.
Yep.
Wow, look at how good I am. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? So now if he definitely does watch this, look at that. I guessed your Mercury before you've even ever seen your chart. Snap. Anyway. Wow, okay, so. Oh my god, he's got a Leo moon. Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. She mentioned that to me. Scorpio Venus, Aries Mars, Gemini Jupiter. Oh my god, it's true news in Pisces. So he has no idea what the fuck he's heading towards and what his actual life direction is. And that's probably actually what he's depressed about. Because he's realizing he hasn't actually made anything of himself per se, because he has no actual general direction. And it's actually him feeling inadequate with Saturn harping on him now, like, dude, what have you been doing with yourself? What are you going to do with yourself? How are you going to fix your shit? Because me, I have a North Node in Aries, which is take the initiative. So I realized I was a dumbass, and I was full of shit, and I was pretending to be Alyssa Sharp. So then I rectified that by hoarding tons of books, giving up television, and just becoming unhealthily obsessed with studying shit. And I made it like day and night, so I can't even tempt myself with any other distractions to do anything else. So for the past 3 years of my entire Saturn return, which is the same time frame that his was, he's been sitting there stewing and feeling fucking completely inadequate and having insecurity issues for the past 3 years, as I have as well. But every time I feel compelled, or I feel this compulsion to like beat myself up, I go and read a book.
This may piss whoever watches this, may piss you off a little bit, but sunlight's the best disinfectant. I apologize for nothing.
Yep. Oh, he says Chiron is in Cancer. That is fucking hilarious. That means that he wasn't nurtured as a child. So
Freudian 101.
So the same thing that he basically, the reason why he's getting upset with her is because he's not emotionally available because he was neglected by his mother. And so instead of him fixing his shit, he's perpetuating what he basically was gypped of in his life by his mother. And then he vicariously goes and tries to fill that gap of nurturing mother kind of thing by finding a Cancer woman to date and then try to pressure her to create a family so he can feel like he's resolving that Chiron without actually resolving it in a constructive, healthy way. So he's trying to put a Band-Aid over a fucking giant gaping wound. And then, because she actually is the smart one in this and made a conscious decision to say, we're not ready and I'm not emotionally ready to deal with that. And I want to make sure if I do the family thing, I have it right. And he's just looking for a quick fix to put a Band-Aid over it. And so he's not doing it the right way. And then he's lashing out at her and saying that she's got problems and she needs to grow up and that she needs to resolve her issues.
Yeah, that's some serious projection there. Solve your own problems. It's making you toxic.
Yep, and since she has Jupiter conjunct with the moon right there, and he's a Sagittarius represented by Jupiter, it would be his voice or his narrative or the things he says that would be directly impacting her emotional volatility and imbalances that deflects to the opposition with the Palace and Lilith. So her negative kind of vibe that she's giving off on her ascendant that she's unaware of is actually directly caused by him trying to pressure her to have kids when she knows deep down that she shouldn't and she's not ready. So because he's actually being inconsiderate and trying to force her to do something that she's not comfortable with, because she knows intuitively it's going to be detrimental to all three of them involved, that he's now taking it out on her and basically ending the relationship and emotionally destroying her because he won't resolve his own issues. Welcome to Sagittarius with Saturn, by the way. What squares do you have with Saturn? He's got an Sun opposition Saturn. And then he's got the ascendant trine with Saturn, but then he's also got true black moon Lilith trine with Saturn, meaning that the origin of what his Lilith actually manifests and causes in his chart is directly in cahoots with why he feels like he has no life direction and why he is actually projecting his consistency and inadequacies. And Sagittarius actually being associated with the mental houses has a lot to do with mania and it being the ancient association with Neptune and Pisces as well, schizophrenia or just mental flights of fancy. In fact, she knows what she's fucking talking about.
Because this is what she does 24/7, 365.
That, and I'm going to reference another. Let's see. Uranus. I mean, I have Uranus and Sagittarius, so I already know this shit. And it's demonstrated thoroughly all over social media. That doesn't really matter. It goes on. Uranus and Sagittarius. Sciatica nerve, serious neurological illness, misfiring of motor nerves, insanity, schizophrenia, insomnia, sleepwalking accidents to the hip and thigh, spasms of the hip and thigh, hyperactivity, hallucinations, accidents due to sports or horses driving or hunting. Yeah. So, and then, let's see. What other things does he have in Sagittarius? I know he's got Saturn? I'm actually thinking of my moon probably, so I'll go look at the moon in Leo. He might actually be a little less insane than me, but there is a fine line between insanity and genius, and I think I like, you know, meander drunkenly over that line here and there throughout whenever time goes by.
I would argue the lines are those three at best.
I don't walk in a straight line anyway, ever, so I mean, there's that. Let's see, Sagittarius, what are his degrees of Sagittarius? Sagittarius at 6 degrees? I love how I said I wasn't going to make this about him, and now I'm turning it into that. Oh, pneumonia? Okay, I don't care about that. I'm looking for mental stuff. 5 degrees. 29 degrees of Uranus. Okay. Impaired sight and blindness. Okay. I wonder if that's metaphorical. I'm just kidding. Being an asshole now. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I don't care. Liking my page and then saying I'm full of shit when you hear something you don't like is also a low blow too. So, I mean, now we're even.
Fair enough.
Moon in Leo. Circulatory disorders. Vital force distributes itself in a concentrated power of warmth and joy. There can be an excess buildup of heat within the system, and then native may disguise their pain or refuse medical help. Oh, infertility apparently is an issue with Moon and Leo, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Oh, shit.
So, calm down there, Sparky. You may not even actually be able to do that right off the bat. Anyway, so there's that. I'm going to avoid talking about him now, because now it's just going to snowball into... Yeah, now it's just going to snowball into me picking on him. Wait. Mercury and Sagittarius. I won't do that. He started this, man. I mean, he's already apparently putting in his head that he hates me, so I mean... Or at least he's willing to, you know, stick to his story with that. If that means he's either got to admit to his shit or that. Oh, Mars and Aries, by the way. Conjunctivitis, shooting pains in the head, wounds to the heads and eyes, aneurysms, capillary bleeding of the brain, brain fever, which also causes hallucinations and psychoticness. People with Mars in the sign need to be careful of not becoming too angry or to allow their heads to become too hot. These folks run high, fast fevers, acne, wounds, and wounds to the head. There's that. Where the fuck did Mercury go? Damn it. God damn it. Jupiter and Gemini? Oh, God. Nervous scattering. Okay, I'm done. Where's Mercury? Mercury, Scorpio. Or Sagittarius, sorry. Sciatica, neural pains in the hips and thighs, schizophrenia, insomnia, restlessness, and nervous disorders. Well, interesting. Okay. Hi, Boo. So, what is the actual degree for Lilith right now? 17 degrees? Where's your Mercury at? 5 degrees, okay. So I'm guessing about the last month and a half or so, when Lilith was directly over his Mercury, that's definitely when he started to get the ideations that there's something wrong with her or whatever, and especially about the whole ethers thing. Like, coincidentally, that just synchronistically worked out for them. Let's see. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm still doing it. I love how I can't even listen to myself. See, subconsciously, the Uranus and Sagittarius thing manifests.
I still maintain it's the necessary thing, whether or not she said she was going to do it.
Yeah. It's just my Jupiter opposition Mercury just, toying with me. Oh, he's got Pallas in his 5th house of romance. So, he's also the ruling sign of his house of romance and affection is Capricorn, meaning conservative and stingy, and they don't give out much. Rationing. Well, there's that. And that just correlates with the whole him being neglected by his parental figure or whatever. Oh, and the funny thing is there's no aspects between his Chiron. So that means that, like, the way that the aspects work, it's like if you're playing pinball, your chart ruling planet is where it starts at with the ball. Then wherever it pings off to would be the aspects that it's associated with. So it'll first ping off right away, effortlessly with trines and sextiles or whatever, anything that's soft aspects, and then the hard aspects will eventually be the time that you have to really force the little lever up, and then it finally goes up when you thought you were about to die. He doesn't have any aspects to his Chiron, so that means that thing's just sitting there. Like, hey, here's a huge open gaping wound, and there's no other planets that are, sending an SOS to let you know that there's something wrong with you. Yep. Wow, he's got Mercury, Sun, Uranus, Saturn, with Neptune in a stellum, meaning they're all together in the same house, in the 4th house, even. So malefic, ether. That's really funny. Actually, since I'm the one that's kind of a magnet for ethers,
yep.
He actually might be the source, and she's actually just picking up on it and trying to figure out what the fuck it is.
Well, the Deuce is going to be like a walking vaccine or anything like that. That's the case because it's toxic as something we should suggest.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's fun too. He's got Mercury opposition Jupiter as well. Wow.
So it's going to be a similar setup like me, where I'm probably just a walking doorway for these kinds of things. The only problem is he doesn't know it, so he's going to lash out as anything else.
Well, he's got, like I said, he's got Mercury opposition Jupiter like I do. So he goes back and forth between concepts. But if he's got a Sagittarius Mercury and he only grasps like a fraction of the concept to begin with, he's basically going back and forth between, out of context details, and he doesn't even have the full picture on either fucking side of the spectrum when he comes to conclusions of things. So, long story short, Luna, I'll send, maybe I'll do a timeout and I'll talk about this in a little bit when I don't feel as, I guess, combative, because it is Mars Day too. It's supposed to be my intuitive day, but when I actually start to get into the fixated kind of mental mode of attacking somebody with honesty, but he obviously, that's definitely something that's not going well with him anyway. He doesn't appreciate that. It's not a Scorpio in him. But, Luna, it's not your problem. It's not your fault.
Tell you what, I feel bad for throwing somebody in the bus here, but my loyalties are already lined up, and it's to Luna, mostly.
Well, that, and also, I'm buddies with Luna, and I'm not that happy with what's his face right now, and he sleeps next to me, and I know where he lives. So, of course, that could also play into his lenience with that. But anyway. Hey, man, I was trying to, unthrow you under the bus. But anyway, I'm going to time out.